The apartment with two shadows. I learned early that buildings are honest. Wood swells when its humid pipes complain, windows howl at the first clean wind. The Indigo Flats, our faded blue building with tile stairs and a temperamental elevator, was no exception. If a door closed too gently or a rug was dragged at midnight, the place said so. So when the wall behind our headboard started sounding softer, I knew it wasn't the building that had changed. It was the people inside it. My wife, Mara, said she liked the indigo because it felt like a secret held just for us. Sunlight poured into our kitchen like it paid rent. The courtyard magnolia wheezed perfume across the second floor. I'm a copywriter who pretends to be an architect on weekends. I carry a measuring tape in my bag and collect floor plans like postcards. I was the one who noticed the ghost door on the landing, a bricked-up frame where the original stairwell had once continued to the roof. This place has stories, I told Mara when we signed the lease. She smiled and said, "Let's write a better one." The walls softened in late spring. It wasn't sound exactly, more like the hush of fabric sliding against fabric, a laugh too careful not to become one. Our bedroom shares a corner with another unit, to see we'd only ever seen a woman go in and out. Tall, black bob, a soft trench tied loose like she'd learned knots in a museum. She always carried a violin case and never checked her mail until after dark. The name on the mailbox said R. Solar, the other slot in that box. If you know these old buildings, you know they have double slots for couples, was empty. The first time I met her, I was in the foyer fixing my bicycle chain with grease on my hands and a lemon in my pocket for the smell. She came in with rain pinned to her hair, and the city's fog still wrapped around her shoulders. Up close she was older than I'd guessed, which is to say she had taken careful care of herself and stopped apologizing for it sometime in the last decade. "Do you live here?" she asked, as if the word here included her too. 2A, I said, nodding toward our door. "Luca." "Ria," she said. She balanced the violin case in one hand and held up a bakery box with the other. "Would you like a slice of apricot tart? I bought two and then remembered I only have one mouth." I took it and decided that some conversations deserve perfect beginnings. On the box, she'd drawn a small sketch of the indigo. The tile stairs, the wobbly banister, even the dent in the mailbox where a delivery guy had missed last winter and hit the brass instead. I wanted to tell her she'd seen us, not just our building. That night the wall sighed again, and Mara said she was going to be late at the gallery. An opening, a donor dinner, names I recognized and a few I didn't. Gallery nights always left a shimmer on her, like she'd been dusted in the powder of other people's attention. I kissed her cheek and smelled something new under her usual iris perfume, sweet, summer warm, like the inside of a stone fruit. "New scent?" I asked lightly. "An artist gift bag," she said. "Everything in tiny bottles, mostly soap. Want me to bring home one for you?" "I'm more of a lemon-in-pocket guy," I told her. After she left, I ate the tart over the sink and watched the courtyard do its dusk sorcery, the windows turning to small televisions of other lives. Across the way, Ria raised her blinds and practiced, the bow moving like a breathing animal. I couldn't hear the notes through the glass, but the shape of the song settled me anyway. The wall stayed quiet. 3 days later, I found a matchbook on the tile stairs. It was the kind of old-fashioned thing restaurants have only if they want to be remembered. Indigo paper, silver font, the nines. A jazz club in the warehouse district, a room we'd meant to try and never had. Someone had drawn a heart on the inside cover and written 9 p.m. I almost tossed it, then put it in my pocket. I pocket everything. Even the useless things feel like clues in a city that never stops whispering. On Friday, Mara texted, "Late, late. Don't wait up." There was a gold star emoji and a fizz of confetti. She used confetti when she needed me to clap. I sent back a small applause and stared at the matchbook until the silver font blurred. The nine smelled like old wood and new gossip. The room had a stage that wanted to be closer to the tables, a bartender with sleeves rolled high enough to show his regrets, and a low ceiling that forced you to sit up, pay attention. I arrived at 8:50 because pretending not to care still requires punctuality. The hostess led me to a small banquette with a line of sight to the door. The lighting did my face the favor of looking like someone else. At 9:07, a couple slid into a booth by the stage and stopped the room without asking it to. The man's jacket was navy and intentional. The woman's dress was black in the way a night ocean is black. I could name Mara by her shoulders before I could name my own breath. She tilted her head and the apricot scent crossed the room like a rumor. The man leaned in. He wasn't a caricature of a villain. He was handsome and tired and sure. He drummed his fingers once on the table, a habit that told me he had been doing this kind of night long enough to make rhythm from nerves. I watched until it felt indecent and then, because I am capable of decency even during an unraveling, I walked out and stood in the alley with my hands on the cool bricks. The music bled through the wall like a pulse. The matchbook in my pocket caught heat from my thigh and felt, suddenly, like a small, ridiculous bomb. On the walk home, I bought a bouquet of eucalyptus because I needed the apartment to smell like something I could name. Ria came up behind me at the building door, key already in hand, hair tucked into her collar against the wind. "Long night?" she asked. "I think I watched an ending begin," I said. She considered me the way musicians consider a phrase. Was it true? Could it be truer if it were simpler? "Coffee," she said. "My place. It's stronger than the truth." Her apartment was 2C, a mirror of ours, but it felt deliberate where ours had drifted. Stacks of vinyl, a row of black shoes by the door like a chorus line at attention, a framed napkin from a Paris bar that probably no longer existed. She put water on, took 2 cups down, and leaned against the counter. "I have a husband," she said. "Julian. He consults for museum tech. He used to ask me what I was practicing. Now he asks when I think I'll be done." "Do you play together?" I said. It was the wrong joke and the right question. She smiled without curving her mouth. "He has a colleague. They think they're stealthy. When he's late most nights, I play Bach and let the phone stay face down because I prefer to provide my own soundtrack." She poured. "This," she gestured to the coffee, to me, to the indigo's blue walls, "is the part where we introduce ourselves as alibis or allies." "I don't want an alibi," I said, surprising myself with how quick it came. "I want a clean line, or at least a clean cut." Ria nodded once, like a conductor marking time. "Then we choose the sharpest knife." We didn't set traps. We were too old for that kind of theater. Instead, we set a table of facts, who we were, what we wouldn't tolerate growing in the dark. The next week, when Mara said she'd be at a donor dinner on Wednesday, confetti again, I asked if she wanted to try the nines on Friday. She said she was tired of jazz that sounded like homework. I told her we could stay home. She kissed my cheek and said, "Next week," in the tone of voice one uses for countries and diets. On Wednesday, I didn't go to the nines. Neither did Ria. We went instead to the roof that our building had forgotten it owned. Remember the bricked-up door. Old buildings are honest, but they're also forgetful. The basement held a spare key ring that had gone unclaimed for decades. One key matched the small door by the mailboxes, the one everyone assumed was a closet. It was not a closet. It was a staircase that rose delicately through dust like a throat inhaling. Ria and I stood at the top step with a flashlight and a shared laugh, and then pushed into air that belonged to the whole city and no one at all. The roof had a wall high enough to make you brave. There were potted plants that had found a way to live without human kindness, a faded deck chair with a missing slat, a view of the river that turned the late hour into a wristwatch for the sky. We sat with our backs to the chimney and didn't speak for 15 minutes because quiet felt like a permission we'd finally remembered to give ourselves. "Tell me something true," she said. "My vows weren't lies," I said, but I said them like I was reading instructions in a language I'd only just learned. She nodded and handed me the flashlight. "Your turn. Tell me something untrue that you believed long enough to make it hurt." "That wanting less is the same as having enough," she said softly, "and that love should be tidy if it wants to be loved back." When it got cold, we went downstairs without touching. Our hands were full of the idea of touching, and that was enough for that night. I slept on the couch and in the morning told Mara I'd fallen asleep writing. She kissed me on the mouth, distracted. The apricot scent was lighter now, or I had gotten used to losing. I don't want to pretend I didn't consider using Rhea as a mirror to make myself feel handsome in my anger. It's a temptation to turn to the nearest soft light and declare it redemption. But revenge only dresses up grief. It doesn't invite it home. We made a different choice. We let wanting be visible without making it a weapon. We kept noticing. The wall between 2A and 2C was an unreliable narrator, but it was a narrator all the same. On a Sunday afternoon, it told us someone had come home early and stumbled into laughter. On a Thursday, it told us 2 phones had buzzed within the same minute, and the same silence had followed. Rhea texted me a single dot when the wall was an orchestra. I texted a comma when it paused for breath. Our punctuation built a private grammar. When the confrontation came, it didn't wear drama, it wore daylight. Mara's phone lit the kitchen counter with a name she forgot she hadn't muted. It was not a donor. The message was unremarkable in its boldness. Same time. The city in 2 words. I set her phone down face up and made tea, the kind that smelled like grass and the possibility of being kinder people. She came in humming an advertising jingle, saw the screen, stopped. "We can talk now," I said, "or we can talk when I come back, but we're going to talk." "Where are you going?" she said. "Please don't say a hotel, that's too on the nose." "Up," I said, "where the air is honest." On the roof, I arranged 2 chairs while the afternoon made the river look like a long, bright blade. Rhea arrived with a bag of oranges and a bottle of water, because she has a practical streak even her violin can't romanticize. When Mara came through the door, she stiffened at the sight of Rhea, then at the sight of the second chair. "This isn't an ambush," I said. "It's a place with fewer corners to hide in." Rhea set an orange on the low wall and peeled it in one long spiral like she was demonstrating a skill that had rescued her before. She didn't speak until Mara sat. "I know this is messy," Rhea said, "but I am tired of rooms that pretend mess is a moral failing. My husband is with your friend. They have liked that word colleague as if it were a cloak and not a costume. Luca saw you at the Nines. I saw Julian's receipts. We can do theater if you'd like, or we can do math." Mara's shoulders dropped a fraction. She stared at the peel like it might be a line she could rewind. "I didn't mean to make the cliché," she said, a little helpless. It felt alive, and then it felt like something I deserved because I was tired of feeling like a museum piece in my own house. "You deserved honesty," I said, "from both of us." We talked until shadows began to look like choices. No one shouted. The city did the shouting for us, taxis playing brass in the avenue, a siren somewhere laying down percussion. It wasn't civilized. It was simply human in the way truth is human, awkward at first, then inevitable. Mara cried once quietly in the middle of describing a night that sounded like an indie movie no one quite believed. I passed her the water. Ria handed her half an orange. The three of us sat there, a geometry problem that didn't want to be solved. In the end, we didn't force an answer. We agreed to pause the acting. Mara would stay with a friend for a while. We would decide like adults in a week, not like children in an hour. When the door closed behind her, the air on the roof loosened its tie. Ria set her hand on my forearm, not a claim, just proof. We stood at the wall and watched the river turn steel and then wine. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. "Not to fix anything, just to sit where the room knows our names." I did. We went down to 2C and put on a record that sounded like silk moving across clean floors. She poured 2 small glasses of red, and we sat on the rug with our backs against the couch like teenagers auditioning for adulthood. When she leaned her head against my shoulder, it felt like the first honest sentence I had said out loud in weeks. The kiss, when it came, was patient, a question asked and answered slowly. Her mouth tasted like orange and the word yes. My hand found the line of her jaw and stayed there. We did not rush the rest. We let wanting be a room we could walk through without breaking anything. The legal ending took months because endings do. Papers, numbers, a sad dance of logistics that required a kind of tenderness. It turns out you can file kindness if you try. Mara and I didn't roast each other in court. We took turns carrying boxes and respect. I still have a ceramic bowl she made in a class we took together our first year in the city. It holds lemons. I resisted making that symbolic. Ria's marriage didn't fracture gracefully, but it didn't shatter the neighborhood either. Julian tried sincerity for a week and then moved out of state when a job decided it wanted him more than we did. Ria kept the violin, the napkin, and the apartment that had learned both our footsteps. I started sleeping there half the week, then most of it, then always. We never called it moving in. We called it staying. If you're hopping for scandal, I'm not the right narrator. Our intimacy wasn't fireworks. It was a dimmer switch sliding brighter, click by click, until both of us could see. There were evenings on the couch where her ankles were tucked under my thigh and the whole world narrowed to that warm tether. There was a morning when she rehearsed a passage so tenderly, the bow seemed to kiss the string, and I realized I was learning a new measurement of time, not by hurt, but by harmony. There was the first night we undressed each other without the ghosts watching, lamplight low, mouths learning, hands careful, breath used like a promise rather than a weapon. I won't give you the choreography. I'll only say we wrote it together. We never told the indigo about the bricked-up staircase key, but the building knows anyway. Some nights the roof is ours and the river writes our names with light. We peel oranges there and toss the spirals onto the low wall, and if someone saw us from across the way, they might think the wind had found a way to leave its signature. When people ask how I knew it was over with Mara, I tell them buildings don't lie. When they ask how I knew it had begun with Ria, I say this. The first time I forgot to check the wall, it stayed quiet. Not because nothing was happening, but because it no longer needed to tell on us. The indigo had gone from holding secrets to holding us. There's a new plant in the courtyard now, a tangle of jasmine that Ria brought home on a whim. In summer it spills breath into our window like soft insistence. On Tuesday nights she practices something slow and mischievous, while I draft little essays about rooms that refuse to be lonely. Sometimes, when I lock the door before bed, I run my fingers across the paint, and the wood answers back with a hum I've learned to translate. Home, it says. Enough, it says. And just before the light clicks off, in the soft space where a city exhales, it adds what buildings only say when they trust you to hear it. Stay.